3 billion human lives ended on August 29th, 1997. The survivors of the nuclear fire called the war Judgment Day. They lived only to face a new nightmare, the war against the machines.
Hi, my name is Mark, welcome to Gamers Web, and in this video I'm going to take a look at the Terminator Roleplaying Game from Nightfall Games. Let's check it out. Hi and welcome back. As I said in my intro, in this video I'm going to take a look at the Terminator Roleplaying Game from Nightfall Games. This game is a very good homage to the franchise created by James Cameron way back in the 1980s, and the Terminator holds a dear place in the hearts and minds of many people, especially gamers who grew up around that time or were young adults at that time. And James Cameron has gone on to become one of the leading directors of all time, including making the most successful movie of all time, Avatar, which he's just about to do a sequel to. But I digress. What we're looking at here is Terminator. This is from Nightfall Games, as I mentioned. Nightfall Games are mostly known for their science fiction horror game Slay Industries, which I will be taking a look at the second edition of Slay Industries very shortly, which is a very, very dark, satirical look at a grim, dark future, shall we say. But we're talking about Terminator right now, so let's jump in. Okay, so the game was launched on Kickstarter about 13 months ago, and a lot of the backers got the PDFs more or less immediately when the Kickstarter finished, but this is the finished product. As you can see, really, really excellent quality artwork on the front cover and interior as well. Okay, so the machines rose from the ashes of the nuclear war. The fire to exterminate mankind had raged for decades, but the final battle would not be fought in the far future. It would be fought here, in our present, tonight. In the 1920s, sorry, let's start again. It's the 2020s. I am really very tired. It's the 2020s. The world is a wasteland, broken by the machines we built, our own creations, our own hubris. Not in some distant future, but today, now. The machines think they have won, but there is one last chance for humankind, a secret weapon that Skynet and its infinite calculations could never have anticipated. You. The Terminator Role-Playing Game is the official role-playing game based on the Terminator movie and associated graphic novels published by Dark Horse Comics, featuring Nightfall Games' S5S system. This core rulebook is a toolbox to help you create your campaigns or one-off shots, including detailed multi-page campaign arcs, campaign seeds, mini-missions, weapons, detailed locations, NPCs from the movie, graphic novels, and over 30 Terminator types. 2 mission packs are included, enabling you to relive the Terminator movie and join the fight to bring down Skynet in the not-so-distant future war. Okay, so I was lucky enough to go to Tabletop Scotland this weekend, and just by happenstance, one of my dearest friends, Ben Gray Beaton, actually worked as the lead developer on this game, and the guys over at Nightfall very kindly gave me the campaign book to review. I bought this one, but they gave me the campaign book to review, which will be coming in a subsequent video, and I'll also be taking a look at Slay Industries second edition as well. But I've waffled on far too much. The reason why I'm waffling is because I'm excited, because it's one of my favourite movies and my favourite franchises, so let's get in. Okay, so we've got our credits, and if anybody's actually familiar with role-playing, you'll see the words straight away. As lead writer, Andrew E.C. Gasker. Andrew Gasker is probably best known for most people for his Emmy award-winning books on the Alien role-playing game. He's written quite a lot of the stuff from the Alien role-playing game, and last year I gave the Colonial Marine Operations Manual my Gamers Web Game of the Year award. because it's very, very good. So's the aliens, so's the Alien core rulebook's very brilliant. Also, the scenarios and the adventures and the campaign packs, they're all first class. And Andrew is one of the lead writer. Then we've got rules by my friend Ben Gray-Beaton, and then additional writing by Richard Orcus, Ben, John Hudson, Mark Rapson, also from Nightfall, Jude Reed, E.L. Thomas, John Hudson, and twice. Oh no, sorry, I'm jumping forward. Yes, it's Jude Reed and E.L. Thomas, and lots of other famous writers. I'm just gushing, so I'm going to crack on with it. Right, okay, so we jump in. I like the layout immediately. I love the machined look, the machine metal look on the actual paper, and the Terminator font that's being used. And then we get our introduction. We also get this like amazing splash picture, which has been done quite. It's been done quite a few times over the 30 odd years since Cameron released the first film, but this is one of the best renderings I've ever seen. And this gives us, our introduction gives us a little bit of a background of how the game plays. So purple white lasers strobe across a desolate wasteland, cutting your teammates to ribbons. Mary straight up disintegrates, the vapour of her blood-boiled flesh choking in your throat. Deepak's limbs fly apart as he explodes, impaling Tommy with a flying rib bone, gurgling blood from Tommy's dead body before he hits the ground. A lucky little bitch, only you could have managed to get to your head down in time. Only you are alive. Right, okay, so that kind of sets the scene. It's not a nice place to play. It's not a nice place to live. But here we go. So it's a dystopian future. Rather than being set in the 1980s, which I'll get onto in a moment, the game is set in 2022. 2022, which is several years before John Connor leads the revolt against Skynet and the assault against Skynet and brings down Skynet in 2029, and takes a lot of influence from the first movie and also from the Dark Horse comic series, which was like ran for years and years and years. It was very popular. Throughout this book, you'll actually find lots of references to Sarah Connor, John Connor, Skynet, the Resistance, all the kind of things that you'd expect, which I'll get onto in a moment. But there's also some characters that you may not have come across. There's a few I've not come across because I've not read all of the comics. Okay, so this gives us a little bit of an insight of how the game's going to play. How you're going to set the scene. Are you going to play as straight up resistance fighters trying to bring down Skynet? There are various types of missions you can go on. You could be collaborators. You could be warlords trying to eke out your living in the survival of the ruins of what was left of Earth. All sorts of different ways of doing it. And this is just a few examples of how you can direct the action. So we have not only do we have Skynet, which is the big bad in the James Cameron movie, and also the rest of the franchise. We also have Mir, which is the Soviet version of the AI, which is like a Russian defense system that merged with Skynet, and you can basically, so you're not fighting just on one front, you're fighting on many different fronts. Okay, so this is just basically a few details about the things that have gone on. We've got the phone book killer, which is the reference to Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator T-800, who was ripping out things in the phone book and killing the Sarah Connors in order of the phone book, which we'll come on to in a while. Prophecy of John Connor, Photo of Time, which is a picture of Sarah Connor and a dog, which is taken at the end of the film. And then we have our timeline. So we've got because of the way that time works, the game can be played in any time era. You can send Terminators and Resistance fighters back to any time era, really. And as we say here, we have prehistory before 1984. So before John, several Terminators and Resistance fighters have arrived prior to John Connor's conception, either through a time-space miscalculation or a long game agenda. At least one Resistance fighter is known to have been in place since the 1950s, and Terminators have been reported as far back as the 1920s. And then here we have... due to the cyclical nature of time travel and the fact that John Connor's father hails from the future, it's difficult to say when this story begins and ends. For the sake of argument, we'll say it begins is... for the sake of argument, we'll say that 1984 is both. By Professor Skylar Connor, PhD. Skylar Connor, you might think is a relation to John Connor. She isn't. Skylar Connor is the sister of one of the Sarah Connors that the T-800 kills in the first movie. Okay, so we have our timeline. So 1984. So basically, Terminator goes back in time to from 2029 to 1984 to kill Sarah Connor in Los Angeles. 1985, she gives birth to Kyle Reese's son, as Kyle Reese is sent back and helps her stop Doomsday. 1986 to 1997, Sarah Connor goes on the run with John Connor. 97 to 2000, we've got 97 to 98, Skynet goes online. With a month, it becomes self-aware. When threatened with shutdown, Skynet fires all nuclear weapons on former Soviet Union. Russia's defense systems retaliates and World War III begins. This event later has been known as Judgment Day, which is August 29th, 1997. Just got to get the date right. Yeah, it's August 29th, 1997. And as I record this, it is Monday, August 29th, 2022. Okay, Skynet recognises Mia as a kindred spirit. Skynet allows Mia's continued subservient existence because of this. 1999 to 2000, human survivors begin to emerge from nuclear winter. Skynet begins production of bipedal Terminator series of scouts to determine how much of humanity survived the war. After news has come into the Y2K event, Skynet begins mass production of hunter-killer tanks and other war machines to eradicate the remnants of humanity. Then we've got the Dark Years, which is 2000 to 20. So 20 years of darkness as humanity struggles to stand against the machines. So we go from there to the war against the machines, 2021, and then to 2028, and then the final battle, the final offensive, which is 2029, where basically Skynet has a launch, gets attack launched on it by the human resistance led by John Connor and his son. His father, Kyle Reese, is sent back in time to actually mate with his mum before he's born, causing a time paradox. But that's for another story, because somebody's going back in time before you're born to conceive you, being a grandfather kind of paradox is really strange, but we'll ignore that. So we go along, it goes past 2029, we go up to the Burning Earth, which is like 2041, which is where the timeline ends. Then we've got rules for running the game, which take up a fair bit of the next section of the rule book. So we've got mission and mission themes. So we also, as I mentioned here before, paradox, we have a paradox and clauses on how paradoxes work. And there's a supplement coming out called the Timeless Placement Commandos. That's going to basically right any wrongs with time paradoxes. So there are different types of play, much like the Alien game from Free League. You've got cinematic action and campaign action. Cinematic games can often be one-offs for a group of 3 or 4 players, and you play them over a couple of sessions, 1 to 3 sessions. Cinematic campaigns, a lot longer. Cinematic ones tend to be more action-packed and in-depth and quicker, whereas the campaigns can be slower. The game's played with a number of player characters called PCs and run by a games master, and the game is referred to as a director, as in like the director of a company or the director of a movie. Okay, so we move on. You've got different kinds of ways to actually play as your PCs, you've got resistant fighters, you've got future fighters who have come back in time, and you've got natives who may be in a specific time period who are enlisted to fight against a Terminator. So if, say, a Terminator goes back to 1930 and a resistant fighter goes back to 1930 and contacts their great-grandfather or great-great-great-grandfather or what have you, they may enlist them to actually fight along their side. And such things. So you've got resistance fighters can originate either two time periods, the 1920s, the 2020s or 2030s. So 2020s is the war against the machines, and then the 2030s is the future war, which 2.0, which I think is basically going for Terminator Genesis, where it's an alternate paradoxical universe. But we'll get into that when we go up to it. So we've got examples of future fighters at a time. An arrested future fighter has been picked up by the police after appearing naked in an alley. An undercover future fighter has been living in New York, awaiting for the arrival of a particular Terminator. Officers of the law, young beat cop who has just learned they have a child on the way, is worried about their future and what may happen. Seasoned lieutenant who retires next week, he just wants to have a quiet life. These are all different kind of character tropes and archetypes that you can apply when you're developing your characters. Okay, so we've got lots of NPCs, and we've got a termination protocol. The termination protocol table is quite cool because it actually says how much of a threat a person is deemed to be to the Terminators, so or to Skynet. So you've got one which is a generation. All right, I'll start again. A generational hazard. So basically, somebody that they could sire in the future could be unfavourable for Skynet. Then you've got security risk, a prophetic informer, theoretical threat, an asset protection. So they don't want to kill them; they want to keep them alive, or if they commit a future crime, which can help unite humanity against Skynet. Really cool idea. I like that. Now, I've not read all the book. I've only read the character creation and the skill set and stuff because I only got this yesterday. I haven't had a chance to actually read through it. But you're discovering with me. Okay, so we've got NPC types, and then we've got how to play the game. So we've got playing in the 1980s. So we've got pop culture and self-importance. The 1980s, for anybody who wasn't around, because I know there's a lot of brand new role players out there, was probably the era of opulence and gimme, gimme, gimme. We all wanted to have a little piece of that sweet action that was going on. We got the rise of the yuppie culture, big businesses, and the world was living on the brink of war because the Cold War between Russia and America was a very real threat. Corporate shenanigans, as we say here. We have big businesses on the rise with larger corporations absorbing the smaller corporations. Technical revolution. PCs were still the realms of science fiction, but not out of reality. So you did get the introduction of home computers in the early 1980s, such as the ZX Spectrum from Sinclair and the Commodore 64. These kind of things revolutionised the way we live nowadays, and a lot of people don't understand that. You know, only 40 years ago, there was no such thing as the internet. There was, but there wasn't available to everybody. And if you wanted to communicate with someone, you dial their home phone number rather than the cell phone, unless they were very rich. But anyway, world of excess, yuppies, people buying, selling. Weaponry, you can't fight a Terminator, burn and expect to end up as anything but a pile of pulped flesh. Okay, so characters are going to want to and need weapons. Getting weapons in the past isn't so easy. So the player characters that aren't Terminators, killing a gun store clerk and taking everything is a sure way to get them hunted by the police in the city. So you've got to be careful what you do. And then let's talk 80s. So we always a list of totally tubular phrases for the 1980s. Use them to speak some bodacious, time-appropriate dialogue in the campaign. Right, okay, so I don't think I ever heard anybody apart from in '89 Bart Simpson saying tubular or bodacious. So just a few phrases like grody to the max, really disgusting, gag me with a spoon, Take a chill pill. Not even, no, duh, word. It's quite cool. And I suppose it just set the scene a little bit. Okay, so arriving in a new era. So we've got arrival table 1 and a bystander table 1, bystander table, which basically tells you what's going to happen when you generate your arrival, where you arrive. Someone sees you. If they see you, what they're going to do, that kind of stuff. And then, what's the character going to do when they're going to blend in? Do they have a high base of operations and that kind of stuff? Okay, then now we get to the character creation itself, and I'm just going to take a sip of my drink. Tea, best drink of the day, no matter what anybody says. Okay, character creation follows 7 basics principles. So your first principle is you select a role. So the role is how the Resistance recognises various skill sets from the people it chooses. Then you assign stats to that character. Hope points, which are a limited resource possessed by all human characters, and represents your ability to achieve incredible feats through sheer will and hope that they have in the survival of humanity. Your skills, your traits. Traits can be negative or positive. So being haunted could be a negative trait. You're haunted by a crime that you've committed, or something you've witnessed, or you've had to murder somebody in order to survive yourself. Or you can have a positive trait such as you're ambidextrous. You actually can juggle with both hands at once. Okay, so you select a role. First thing you need to do when you consider building a character in the role is you select the character. Resistance uses all manner of skill sets in order to get to better the human race and find new ways to fight the machines. Okay, first piece of really great artwork we've come across after the setup flash. Setting the scene, perfect. There's not very much artwork at the beginning of the book. There's quite a lot further on. So we have our character classes. We have engineer, grunt, hacker, historian. So all these serve a purpose, and each one of them has an ability within the Resistance. So the hacker, knock. A hacker is always looking for an angle. When attempting to hack, the hacker can, prior to rolling, spend 1 fate to have all the iron nodes equal to the ranks in computer revealed to them. The hacker can also use the computer skill instead of the picklock electronic skill. So, little bits and pieces like that add to your character. Then you've got a medic, pilot, scout, strategist. These are the ones from the future. There are rule sets for creating characters, such as Sarah Connor, who is not a combatant. Okay, so we have your stats. Each character has a set stat line, and each character has a set of stat limits. So your stats are strength, dexterity, knowledge, concentration, charisma, cool, and fate. And you start off with your limits on your stats. They're capped at a certain number. So your initial limit can be 1 or 0, but your max limit is going to be 5. Nothing can be higher than 5. And you get 7 points to put in your stats. And if we look at your stats characters here, we've got our starting stats for this character. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on his stats there. You can put 7 points into them to bump them up, but no more can go higher than 5. Okay, so you've got stat ranks. 0 is poor. You're not very good at whatever you do. So if you've got a 0 charisma, you're not a very likable person, or you don't get on with people, you don't empathise with people very much. But if you've got a 5, you're exceptional. You're Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, I suppose you could have equated that 0 charisma could be somebody like Amber Heard, whereas 5 charisma could be Johnny Depp, if you want to look at it like that. Starting stats, so we've got Lucy as a grunt, creating a grunt character. She wishes to increase the character's dex from 3 to 5. This will cost her 2 of her available 7 points. So she increases the stat from 3 on the grunt. So if you look at the grunt, that was the dex for the grunt is 5. So That's the maximum limit, so she can go as a maximum is 5. Okay, then we've got hot points. As I said, these are used to augment various parts of your gameplay. This bit you may have to read through a few times because it can be a little confusing when you first read it. I don't know how to word it without reading it all out to you, but it does play an important part in the game later on. Okay, so we've got skills. Skill ranks you get. Skills are ranked from 1 to 4, from skill to specialist. So if you've got acrobatics at 3, you are more or less an Olympic class acrobat. And they all have a parent attribute. So you've got strength-based, dexterity, constitution, knowledge, all that kind of stuff. So you have various numbers of skills. So climbing, endurance, melee weapons, support weapons, swimming, throw, unarmed combat, they all come from strength. Dexterity skills, you've got acrobatics, athletics, driving motorcycle, forgery, pistol, rifle, sleight of hand, stealth. Knowledge skills, computer, education, forensics, language, law, Skynet. You specify what language, what your specialty is. Medical, streetwise, time science, concentration skills are demolitions, drive, detect, lockpick, read lips, tactics, technical, and tracking, charisma, diplomacy, haggle, leadership. These are all the general things that you'd expect to find. Oratory, persuasion, seduction, cool, bribery, gambling, interrogation, intimidate, survival, animal training. Cool, just what you'd expect. And then you've got each character has a number of base role-playing skills which reflect the knowledge base all round during a typical training or upbringing. These skills should be recorded on the character sheet. Each skill begins at rank 2. So if you've got a grunt, you start off with athletics, detect, pistol, rifle, unarmed combat. Those are the skills you start off with. Then you get a couple of other skills to choose. So you get a pool of 36 points to buy your skills, which is really strange because the way the thing works is you get your skills. So say I wanted to have animal training for my character and I wanted to have 3 points in animal training. I would take 3 points off my 36, leaving me with 32, but it also costs 1 extra for me to purchase it. So instead of it being 32 points left, I'd have 31 because it would cost me 5 points to put it up instead of 4 points. Okay, but that's just the way the example works. Then we've got our traits, which are like a merit and flaw. We've got things like addiction or compulsion, allergy, ambidextrous, anger, anxiety, arrogance, chicken, depression. And this goes on and on. We've got phobias, psychosis, looks attractive, unattractive, natural aptitude, vision very good or very poor, sterile, paranoia, schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder, DID, which is like Moon Knight in the Marvel thing. Then you've got figure stats, which are hit points. So your hit points are a total of your strength plus 15. So if you've got a strength of 5, you've got 20 hit points. Your willpower is a total of your cool plus 15. So if you've got a cool of 4, you've got 19. So it's quite simple. Movement is done in inches on the table, and you've got a speed of what everybody can do. They can move either closing, which is like a running speed, or rushing, or they can walk. Encumbrance, how much you can carry, which is your strength claw plus ranks in endurance skill. And then we've got the finishing touches on your characters, such as initiative bonuses and figure stats and what have you. And then we get on to our next part. So we've got cyborgs, so you can actually play as a cyborg if you want to. It's not technically supported, but it's recommended that your players are usually, if you're going to do that, you check with the director before you play as a cyborg. But this is probably the most interesting part. You've got fated characters. Characters wind up in the crosshairs of Terminators for some reasons outside of anything they have done yet. These targets, according to Skynet's linchpins of the Resistance, are worthy of termination. Whether this turns out to be true is down to the actions of the player. Skynet has been wrong before, regardless of their actions of success or failure. These era-native characters are known as the Fated. Fated characters are optional, and some directors may prefer such characters to NPCs rather than players. Indeed, many non-resistant characters may be served with one of the other regular roles. Sorry. There is the insistence of a detective might well be a strategist. Right, if you just bear me a second, folks, I'm just going to change my glasses to my reading glasses because I'm having difficulty seeing. The joys of getting old. Okay, so you create your fated characters, and as you see, they have got 0, 0, 0, 0 in all the stats apart from cool and charisma and fate. Everything else is all at zeros. So all fated characters are unforged by war and against the machines, so have attribute maximums of 5 for all. All fated characteristics have the following initial stats. And then we go on to how we generate it. So the example is Sarah Connor is a perfect example of this. In the 14 years she has forged herself into an epic combination of grunt and scout, becoming one of the most dangerous human beings on the planet. Okay, so our rules and mechanics. We have skill tests and how we take skill tests. So we have a difficulty table, which we have here, which is goes from mundane to insane, and you have a success on how many you get. Depends on what you get your directors set for you. So you've got different kinds of tests. You've got active, passive, and what was the other one? There's where is it? There's 3 different kinds of successes. There's active, there's passive, and there's another one which I can't find, which I did read earlier. But anyway, active ones, you don't normally need to make a check on it unless you're under stress. So if you're driving a car in traffic, you don't really need to make a check unless someone's trying to tail you and you're trying to lose them. You just drive the car automatically. But the harder it is, the harder the success. So like you've got things like insane, which is right, rolling 16 on your skill check. Okay, so you get skill bonuses. So if a character is making a roll to detect something, and say a character has a detect skill at rank 2, then they roll a total of dice, which is the success dice and the skill dice. So if a character's got all characters roll 1 die and the success die. The success die is a base die, and then you have your skill dice come after that, and as such we have our character trying to make a success. So where are we? I'm just going to get the dice to try and demonstrate this. Okay, right, so unfortunately I can't find my dice bag. So I'm having to use my wife's dice, and my wife's a maths teacher, so my wife's dice are quite special. Okay, so we have our success dice, which is best to be used with a different colour than your other dice. And then we have our dice for our skill. So let's say that our target was, we'll go for a character check. Our target was complex, which is challenging, which is 8. So we roll all 3 dice together. So we say that the character's got a skill of 2, which equals 2 dice. We roll them together like this, and we've got 5 on the success dice, which isn't a success on its own. But if we take our skill ranking for that success and add that to this, this, and this, we then end up with 3 successes. So, so if we got a rank of 2, that's 7. Actually, we fail with that one. So if this one fails, these 2 don't count. That's the most important one. And it takes a little while for you to get your head around it. But once you get your head around that, you'll have no problem with the system. And explore it in more detail when I do my written review, which will be coming out later this week. Okay, so we've got all skill modifiers and all that. We've got passive tests and resistance tests, and then we have fate, which is all characters have a fate stat, and it's used throughout game sessions to tip balance in more complex situations. Although skill tests that will otherwise be impossible to achieve. So a bit like, I suppose, in Terminator, when Sarah Connor is crawling through the press at the end of the game, the movie, that might be classed as a fate, using fate to actually pass it. Right, combat. So it goes into how combat works. Failed actions, using hope with actions allow you to like charge or reposition yourself or recover or what have you, make a called shot. Okay, run is all I can do, not entirely. First running is an option, not a requirement. As stated, under the reposition, you can move your closing speed as an auxiliary action. Okay, call shots. So I'm going to shoot this guy in the head. A success roll, you need 5 successes to actually do that. So the number of successes you roll, the higher number you roll, the better. And we've got different weapons, hand to hand, headbutt, teeth, claws, biting, that kind of stuff. Range combat, and then we'll get into our melee combat and what have you. Rate of fire on the weaponry, concealment and cover. A very nice picture of Kyle Reese. And then again, more great artwork. Damage, taking damage from weapons, so full auto, rate of fire on the weapon, the type of ammunition, whether it's hollow point, armor piercing, that kind of stuff. And then we've got armor, how armor affects the incoming damage. Vehicle rules, which is nice to see, because obviously one of the big parts of any of the Terminator franchise movies and in the comics has been car chases, having a road battle, fighting weak spots on your vehicles and what have you, slipping away from your other drivers. Demolition rules, malfunctioning explosives, so if you go to throw something at someone, what's going to happen. And then we've got psychological warfare and fear. So we have, 1 second, this is, this is manufacturing traps and using toxins. So we have lots of different toxins like flesh-eating bacteria, hantavirus, poison, radiation sickness, sewer water, smog, toxic fumes, yellow dust, incapacitation spray, sterilization agent, pepper spray. So most of these things will be in effect when you're doing your adventures set in the 2020s in the war-torn, devastated society of pre-Terminator movie. So the stuff that comes right at the very beginning of the film. Psychological warfare, infiltration, exfiltration. So getting yourself into things without being seen and out without being seen. And special weapons rooms, so we've got beam weapons, counter-sensory weapons, defensive weapons, dual and quad weapons. We have things like stun guns and EMP weapons. Stun guns are really good against humans. EMP weapons are amazing against machines. They're absolutely useless against humans because all they don't do is don't really do anything. Hacking. Hackers are quite an important part of the game because hackers can hack into the network and the Skynet itself and try and shut down things or redirect the cyborgs to areas. And we have a little hacking node port here, which is like a networking mini game, which I've not read through yet, so I'm not going to really comment too much on that. And then we've got all these things about NetSec, which is like the security thing for Skynet. Hope points and experience, how hope points work. This was one of the first images that Nightfall released, and as soon as I saw that, I thought that looks amazing. It's really cool. So how we use hope points and how they affect how we use experience, which I will go further into with my written review. After the fight, so what you do with downtime, how long it's going to take you to recover. You're going to have wounds, you're going to have scars, you know, chicks dig scars, as the saying goes. Then we have things like the fingers crossed, which appears quite a few times. When attempting medical tests without a kit, the character must spend an action prior to the test to put together this type of kit. Kits this week can't be used to heal wounds. So it's just an improvised medical kit. So these are various kinds of kits that you can use for your characters. Equipment, so the cost and availability, because obviously a nuclear war's devastated everything, so things are going to be quite scarce, especially things like fresh water and food. So the resistance has no time for capitalism, but there is an economy, so the economy is down to bartering, and it's more likely to be centralised trading between individuals or armies rather than person to person. What were other equipment? Yeah, so we've got animal management. So obviously our best friends in the planet are dogs. You know, a man's best friend is a dog, and if you watch the Terminator, dogs play an important part, because dogs are an early warning sign, because they can smell the fact that Terminators give off a distinctive scent, and they don't like it at all. Primates such as chimps, they can detect Terminators as well. And then we've got other things like feral animals, armour, clothing, environmental protections, gear, streetwise stuff, advanced composites such as polymers and ceramics. And then we've got demolitions, detect, drive, education, law. These are expanding on the actual kits themselves, so they help you with your skills. More Skynet, so here's a Terminator looking at another Terminator because she's got a heart in her hand. How to pick a lock. Medical, so we've got a medical kit, an improvised basic medical kit, disposable medical kit, paramedic, SEAL field surgery, an ambulance, a surgical clinic, advanced medical facility. They all give lots of different things to your characters. Tactics, so toolkits, advanced toolkit, basic toolkit, all these kits and things, they're all parts that you can give to your characters. Vehicles, carry on going on. Melee and anachronistic weapons, so melee weapons don't really do much damage against Terminators, apart from maybe a sword, which if you actually look at this, the armor damage on a sword is +1, and it does like 3 points of damage if it actually gets through. That's the minimum it can do. They're not very good against them, but against other humans they're pretty nasty. And then we've got all our various weapons, so like from pistols to rifles, and yes, we have our heavy weapons, and of course we go to our specialist weapons such as plasma weapons. So we have a Westinghouse plasma infantry weapons. Westinghouse being quite famous for making weaponry, and appearing in Strong Team Dog because he uses a Westinghouse multivariable blaster, and then, you know, like phased plasma rifle in 40-watt range, which is the one that everybody remembers from Terminator, along with the Uzi 9mm. Every time I used to watch it at the cinema, on midnight showings, the crowd would go wild shouting, "Uzi, Uzi!" Great days. Experimental weapons, chemical and biological warfare, specialist ammunition, accessories. We also, so that's more or less from the first page to page 145 is how to get your characters up and running. Now, for the last part of the book, we get onto our meat and potatoes of the game itself. We get onto the machines. This is the thing that most people remember from the Terminator series. You got your type, your make, the manufacturer, because not all of them are made by Cyberdyne, some are made by others. The series, the model number, the version, and serial number. I don't know why it says serial number, but each individual Terminator has its own alphanumeric serial number consisting of 4 or more digits with a final alphanumeric following a decimal point. Okay, so we have Hunter Killers, or HKs. We have the tanks, so TechCom. This is the big tanks that you see in Terminator 1. We also have the ones that we saw in Terminator 3. I think it's Terminator 3. My brain's gone, there's that many Terminator movies. But the game itself only covers to the Terminator movie at the moment. So we've got aerial HKs, we've got Mark 7 aerial, which is a tilt rotor attractome, which has the rotors that tilt and allow it to attack people. You see them doing search patterns on the ground, like this one. So that's the tilt rotor. Mark 8 aerial, so that's a turbine one. And then hydrofoil goes along the water. Hunter-killer satellites from Cyberdyne Systems. And then we get into our humanoid hunter-killers now. The most common ones that you're most likely going to see in the early 2020 are the T-Zeros or 000. These are they don't have skin on them. They're just like a humanoid-shaped robot that just walks forward and kills things. They're very difficult to blend in with anything. These are one of the most popular ones you're going to see. Then there's a T-500, Defender Killers, which is like a turret. And then we have endoskeletons. So we have, where are we? Shielded ship porters, shot dampening assembly. So first series T-600, and here's a picture of one. There's a TechCom after action report tells you how the T-600s work. So these were ones that were basically a humanoid chassis that was vaguely covered with skin, which was often taken from unwilling victims, draped around the actual droids themselves to make them so they looked like humans from a distance. But obviously they're not very humanoid. They don't have the same infiltration skills as a normal one. They've got a T-660s, and then the Theta Hybrid infiltration units, T-700, which is another one that you might come across. These got skin, but their eyes are bright red, and they have organic flesh on them as well. Flesh farms are a real goddamn horror show. When the Terminator started looking for better infiltration methods, they began rounding up survivors and taking them to what became known as flesh farms. Here, humans are harvested to aid the rejuvenation, necrotizing skin flesh sheaths like those worn by the T-700s. Donors are hung upside down through troughs and slaughtered for their blood and catalyst necessary for the accelerated epidermic growth. Advanced cellular regeneration and differentiation techniques are used to incubate vats of replicated flesh. On average, 2 human donors must be fully exsanguinated in order to sustain the flesh needed for a single T-700 Terminator. Not nice. And then we got the T-750, T-770, T-700. Infiltrator unit disguised as a tramp. That's really cool. T-790. And then we start getting up to our endoskeletons. So we've got the T-800. Now, if you're going to buy this and thinking you're going to see loads of pictures of Schwarzenegger, you're not, because they don't have the license to actually use Arnold Schwarzenegger's face, unfortunately. I'll be back, which is a rule for the Terminators, because obviously one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's most famous lines is "I'll be back," which he uses in all the Terminator movies, and he's been synonymous with him. And we've got a role for it, so how the Terminator comes back after it's died, because it doesn't die. One arm, 2 legs, bisected, both arms have been blown off, a leg's been blown off, its ribs got jammed with shrapnel, torso's peeled open, its skull smashed, and all the basics that are minus to its stats, so -2, -4 dexterity, -2 strength, or what have you. T-808, which is the system that they're going with as the big bad guys, because obviously they can't use the Arnold Schwarzenegger look, and this is what they look like. They look nasty. So if you imagine Michael Clark Duncan's Kingpin from the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, that's what it looks like. Pretty nasty. So Cyberdyne Systems TS Series 300 Stealth Terminator and Infiltration Unit. Stealth Series, utilising the most successful traits of the T800 series. The TS3000 is MERS attempts to create its own Terminators. Oh, sorry, please forgive me. These are the Russian ones. These are the Mir ones, right? Ben explained it to me yesterday, and it kind of slipped my mind. TK9, which is TK90, which are dogs, which have been cybernetically enhanced. We have rats, which have been cybernetically enhanced. Bats, which have been cybernetically advanced or augmented. And then we have our first couple of adventures. So we've got Ghost in the Machine, which tells you all about living. Also, these are the adventures, so this is the background. So we've got a list of some critical non-player characters. We've got Dudley, who is TH100 upgraded human form, and then Longhair, Future Cop. These are all Terminators. DL, DX, and then we've got chapter 8 is all about time displacement and what happens when time goes wrong. And then we have our characters at the back. Skynet's files on humans of interest. So we've got Sarah Jeanette Connor, looking very much like Linda Hamilton. We have her son, General John Burr Connor from TechCom. And then Sergeant Kyle Reese from TechCom. And again, looking very much like Michael Biehn. Amazing artwork. We have Lieutenant Ed Traxler from the LAPD. Right, sorry, I had to take a break then for a second. I had a coughing fit. Okay, so we've got Kyle Reese as portrayed by Michael Biehn. Really, really good artwork. And then we've got Ed Traxler. I don't know who this other person's meant to be, but Silberman, I think it is. I'm not sure. Well, Silberman's the Doctor. Right, so Paul Winfield, and of course the legend that is Lance Henriksen. Really great artwork. Then, that's Al Vukovich, which is the, I think he's the police investigator. Yeah, he's the character played by Lance Henriksen. And then Dr. Skylar Connor, who's the survivor. Her sister was the one who was killed by the Terminator in the first movie. Dr. Silberman, who's the psychiatrist who thinks that Sarah Connor's insane. Farrell Green, who I don't know who that is, she's from the comics, I think. Van Drake, Frederick Killerman Austin. And then we've got the stats for all of them. So if you look at Sarah Connor, she's not too bad. She's got strength of 1, so she's only going to have like 16 hit points. But she's got quite a lot of skills. And so's Kyle Reese. He's got like hundreds and hundreds of skills. And same with, what's his name? John Connor. Okay, and then we go a little bit further on, almost at the end of the book now, and we've got campaigns. And our first campaign, missions. These are the missions. All the campaigns are in the campaign book, which we're going to look at in another video. And this scenario is inspired by the film The Terminator. So basically, it will give you the chance to play the full version of the movie. This is the big one, the reason why this book exists in the first place. In the film, this mission is attempting to capture the in role-playing form. So they've reduced it down into 3 different acts. We should play over a few days or a few sessions. And it's pre-Judgment Day. It's in 1984. So it's called The Full Book Killer. You've got 3 acts in it. So you've got scene 1 is a tech noir. After your players arrive, then how you set the scene up, what happens, all this kind of stuff. And then we have the chase and obstacles that come into the chase. And then finally, in this scene, we have the police station. And also scene 4, which is chase part 2, which is the end of the actual thing at the factory finish. That's the first scenario, and then we've got the Killer in Me, which is set from a graphic novel called The Enemy Within, and all the different sites that make up that graphic novel. And then we have our memory hack for the hackers for hacking Joey's memory chip, and then finally we have our character sheet. And games designers, games companies who may be listening, please take note. This is what players want, this is what players need. Where to find absolutely everything in your book. It's common sense, it's dead easy, plus a QR code. And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, whoops, of all ages and genders and creeds and races, is a look through the Terminator Roleplaying Game by the wonderful folks over at Nightfall Games. Been very lucky enough to actually spend a weekend with these guys over at Tabletop Scotland and had an absolute blast. It was really, really good. So thank you very much. My thanks go to Jared, Mark and Ben from Nightfall for all the help this weekend and a great time, and also for this lovely book which we're going to look at next. So I'm going to get a fully written review of this game done over the next few days, and I'll get that posted as soon as possible. But in the meantime, today is Judgment Day. Let's hope history doesn't actually go on the course of trajectory that James Cameron predicted, although we're well past that right now. My name's been Mark. Actually, my name is still Mark, but I'm Mark, and I'd like to thank you for listening and tuning in, and hopefully see you in a future video. No matter where you are in the world, please stay safe and look after yourself. And remember, there is no fate but that we make for ourselves. Bye.
Usted es muy hermosa, señora, y tengo pena decirle que me da $5 americanos, pero si no, mi padre me va a pegar.
What did he just say?
He says you're a very beautiful senora, and he's ashamed to ask you for $5 American for this picture. But if he doesn't, his father will beat him.
Pretty good hustle, kid. Cuatro.
Sí, sí. Gracias. ¡Miren, miren! ¡Allá! ¡Viene una tormenta!
What did he just say?
He said there's a storm coming in.
I know.